demonstrate how to pull a handle on these cups here. I just trim them so they've got a nice sort of round bottom there and a little fun dimple there. And yeah, we're just going to pull a handle and see how this goes. This is a first video trial for me, and I hope that it goes well so that we can continue through this quarantine business with a little bit of pottery making along the way. Okay, so I've just torn off just a chunk of clay, and I'm kind of eyeballing the size here of how much I need for this cup. This one's a little bigger, so I'm just going to tear off a little bit to add. Bag off to the side here. So that's the clay, and when I say eyeball, I actually do, put it against the cup and just kind of imagine stretching it out. You get better at this as you go along, or not. Yeah, so I'm just folding the coil like that and then rolling it, and that's a way of wedging the clay for a handle, wedging a small amount of clay. Okay, so how that works and the principle of it is when you roll it, you make it round like that. Okay, and then when you fold it, that roundness doubles up, and then the air expels out the side like that. Okay, air out that way, so you squish and roll. Okay, so now we've got our wedged coil of clay, which is the same kind of clay as the cup, and I've rolled it into a kind of a carrot shape, and then I'm going to tap out the end here like that. Okay, so that it domes like this, so that when I push it against the cup, again, same principle as that wedging, the air will kind of expel or squeeze out the sides there. All right. Then I'm going to choose a spot on the cup, so again, using that eyeball. Okay, and I'll just give it a scratch. And for scratching, you can use all manners of things. I know folks that use pin tools or a comb or a broken chunk of a comb to make it smaller. That's a really good tool. And folks use a toothbrush. That's a little bit finer. I use that sometimes as well. I've got this here. It's a serrated rib, and it makes pretty short work of scratching that up. So you can see I've placed it here and here where I intend to join the cup to the handle, and then because I've scored it prior to actually doing any pulling and stuff like that, it's already sort of set in its design of where I'm going to attach to. Okay, so we've got our carrot with a dome top, we've got a scored cup. I'm going to take just a tiny little bit of slip. So again, this is a slip just made from the same clay as I've thrown the cup with, and I just kind of like peanut butter on a nice sourdough leavened rye bread. You frost it on there a little bit. Okay, then we go ahead and we push that on there. So domed top, pushing onto the cup. When I do this, I could cause stress on the cup in these areas, so I'm going to just put some fingers underneath here to support it while I push, and as I push I'm just going to apply some pressure and a little sort of twisting or grinding kind of motion there, just to get that soft clay pushed into the firmer clay of the cup, into the little scored teeth that I've made there. And some of you might be thinking, hey, he didn't score the handle. And that's because the clay of the handle is quite soft, and it will push into the scoring of the cup well enough. That's my theory anyways, so I don't tend to score the handle. Okay. So this being my first video, I'm noticing how tricky it is to pay close attention on the handle and where I'm smoothing and smearing and look at the camera as well to make sure I've got a good angle for you, but that's my practice here. Okay, so I'm just going to tear a little chunk off the end because it's kind of a funny shape. I'll do this off to this side here. And now I'm just shaping the handle. Just pinching between my fingers to try to make it sort of taper on the two sides here, because that seems to make sense to this particular cup design. There's all kinds of shapes of handles that one could make, but for this cup design I like just a sort of almond shape, kind of elliptical shape of handle. And now going in these areas, while the handle is sticking straight up and I haven't added a bunch of water so it's not so floppy, and while it's a bit thick, I'm going to address this area in here and here, because I can get my hand around there without having to worry about knocking around a soft floppy handle. So I'll just smooth in there. And you can see, hopefully you can see, I've got all these sort of finger marks and stuff like that, and I find a really great way to get rid of that and really blend it all out is to use a sponge that's got a bit of water in here. So if I squeeze it, a little bit of water comes out, but that's what carries the clay away. So I'm just going to go in there and blend out all the like bumps. Okay, so we'll refine this later, so don't get too hung up right now. You just want to get rid of the majority of the bumps. Okay, so at this point we're going to start pulling on the handle, but if you look at it from all dimensions, so twist it around, turn around, look at it this way and everything, you want to make sure that it's not got a jog here. You can see with that sponging that there's a little bit of a thin spot there. Again, hopefully you can see that. So if you notice these things, you want to pinch them out, or this is what I do, is I sort of pinch them out just to make sure that your shape, before you start wetting it and pulling on it, it goes from widest to narrowest, okay? Because if you start pulling on this and there's a thin spot here, this part will detach. It'll just, you know, your hands will catch on the sort of wider part, and it'll start to pull the handle right off the cup, okay? Right, so just want to, my little bit of slip is already kind of firmed up down here, so I just want to make sure I've got some tooth right there. Okay, and here we go. Just got my water off to the side here, so I'm just going to wet this and get the water all over the whole thing. And I'm going to start with a round shape, okay? And this will help me get a little more length, and it's quite thick up here, so I'm going to thin that out, but I'm going to do it a little bit later, so still with the round shape. And then to flatten it out so it's not so thick, I'm going to use scissor fingers like that. And draw it down, that flattens things out. And then cradle my hand like this, and then use a thumb to draw down, and that will help give shape, okay? So I'm going to do that a little bit at the sides. That'll bring me back my ellipse shape, okay? Or just if it hasn't gone away yet, it'll just affirm that and smooth it all out. So I go between scissor fingers, and you're going to do this by feel, so if it needs flattening, you can do the scissor fingers. If it needs a little bit of sort of shape, you have a lot of dexterity with this sort of cradle here, so hand behind the handle and then the thumb on the top. Okay, and then of course you can turn the whole cup and do that all on the back side. And now I want to make this thinner here at the joint because it's quite thick in this area, so I'm going to put my thumb right there up in the armpit kind of the cup. Right. Okay. There we go. So now I've got more or less the length that I want. I've actually got quite a bit extra, and that's what you want. You'll see why in a moment when we go to attach the handle. Okay. So you see, if I wind that down, I'll have quite a bit extra hanging off the end. Okay, this is quite a bit extra, and the handle's still a bit thick, so I'm going to just scissor finger some off, just so that there's less weight hanging off the cup, and go back in and do this again. Okay, there we go. And then, now that it's thinned out enough, and I've organized it to be a little thinner up here, I'll go a little more, and then it's time to wind it down and attach it to the bottom of the cup. Okay. I'm just going to use the curvature of my finger here, so that I'm going to put against the cup here like this. Okay, so my thumb, just to make sure that it blends well, integrates into the cup. Put that around there and just press into that area. And this is a chance too to just decide whether you want this to come out of the cup this way or cup this way. So you just, anytime you're holding the cup, when you're pulling a handle, you want to work with gravity and make sure that gravity is one more hand. You've got one hand holding the cup, one teasing the handle out, and the other hand of gravity just pulling down always. So remember that that's actually doing something. If you ignore that hand, you get a clumsier handle. So just keep that in mind. So just smoothing that out and letting the gravity kind of tell me how it's coming out of the cup, what angle it's coming out of the cup. Then I'm going to go and look at the negative space between the cup and the handle, and then put that against my score marks. I'm going to check out straight on whether it's over here, over here. Okay, so you don't want it crooked, right? Maybe you do, but that's up to you, okay? And then we'll attach that on. So just pushing a little more firm there, pressing the cup. You see the curvature of the handle this way is sympathetic to the curvature of my finger. And so I'm going to just wet the finger and rub back and forth there. And then you have this awkward little tail hanging off the end because there's a little bit extra. So I'm just going to use my pin tool, just press right through that. Okay, and then you see I've got it attached. Now comes some finessing. So there's these wet little bits that I can just kind of mop up. I'm going to wet a finger, press a little more firmly there. Okay. Just so that it's well stuck. It is a little off, but there we go. That's okay. And then I like to sometimes leave it just like this, and then other times I like to add a little piece of clay right down in there. It gives it a sense of strength and a good join. This will work, and that little area will fill up with glaze a little bit to a degree and sort of soften this join here. I'm just pushing into this thicker clay right here, and that sort of changes the kind of pitch of the handle and also blends a little bit. I get fussy in these areas sometimes, and I think that's okay. You want this handle to, I want these cups to feel smooth and have nice lines that flow into one another, which will carry your eye around in a soft and pleasing way. So there you go. So I'm going to look at this negative space here. Use the old eyeball. And that negative space is really important. If you get that right, if that pleases you and your eye, okay, it will work for others as well. That's the theory. Okay, so I'm going to fill this little space right here. Okay, so I take a little pinch of clay. Set this aside a second here. Okay, and then so roll just a little ball like this, maybe a little more. press the sides out so that it tapers. Okay, both sides. And then I'll dip that in water. Okay, and then we put that right there. Yep. And I don't know where I got it. I don't know if it's a pottery specific tool, but it's just this little piece of round wood that tapers, and it's really great to get in these areas and press. So I press that in. Okay, so you see it looks kind of a little messy right here. But then I use the roundness of the tool to just kind of press and sort of tear away the clay. And then in here, around it, I think I might have lost many of you. These aren't quick handles. But if you stayed, thank you. And hopefully this might help your understanding. If you don't have one of these tools, you can use a pin tool as well. Yeah, hopefully this might help your understanding of handcrafted stuff and the care and attention us career potters and makers put into these things. And it's largely for our own satisfaction, but it's the idea of putting something into the world that imbues a sense of care and attention and focus, and hopefully that will translate into your morning cup of Ceylon orange pekoe tea with a little bit of cardamom and fennel, your morning cup of chai or coffee or bulletproof coffee or oolong tea or a lapsang souchong tea or green tea or white tea. Ovaltine, Horlicks, Ribena and hot water. Okay, so I just kind of put some stuff on there accidentally. Okay, so I'm just smoothing, fussing. Okay, but one thing I want you to notice is that when you're pushing a soft handle on your cup, if you push too hard here, you want to push hard enough so that the soft clay of the handle pushes into the more firm clay of the cup. But if you push too hard here, you're going to squish and get a thin spot. So all that fussing and stuff like that was spent adding a little bit of clay here so that the joint looks secure. There's a bit of thickness where it starts here, it thins out as it comes down here, and then kind of gets thicker again there. So that just gives you, a bit more of a look of security on your cup, that you know that you can hold that precious hot liquid and it's not going to fall out of your hand due to a thin handle or a thin join like that. Okay, so yeah, there's the unabridged handle pulling. You're starting to see my fuss here. That's it. Okay, and then just as a nice little finish, what we're going to do, add the personal touch. So I'm going to just put some score marks here, and I take just a teeny tiny bit of that clay, and put just a drop of water or slip on there, not much. I put this tiny bit of clay on there, and with the pin tool I'm just going to take just a little bit of that away, just so there's not too much. I'm going to take my stamp here, and I'll push that in. Okay. Thanks for watching, everybody.